Over the last 24 hours, the geopolitical high-wire act between the United States and Iran erupted into an explosive war of claims that exposes the structural fragility of global power. In a series of high-profile statements, American leadership declared that the U.S. Navy had asserted total operational control over the Strait of Hormuz, the vital maritime artery through which 1/5 of the world's petroleum flows daily. Official announcements from Washington reassured international financial markets that commercial sea lanes were once again secure under the protection of American sea power. However, within hours, Iran's Central Military Command issued an aggressive direct denial, labeling Washington's assertions as outright fabrications and declaring that no commercial vessel transits the waterway without direct authorization from Tehran. Beneath these competing public declarations lies a stark, irreconcilable contradiction. While Washington attempts to project absolute global dominance, physical tracking data and military actions on the water tell a far more dangerous story. Just hours after Washington's declaration, U.S. Navy helicopters fired missiles at a commercial cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman, attempting to bypass the naval blockade, highlighting that deterrence remains entirely unstable. Both narratives cannot coexist. Either the United States preserves its historic capability to enforce open navigation, or a regional power has successfully constructed a permanent veto over global trade. Today, we break down the military mechanics behind this high-stakes confrontation. To understand why this dispute has reached an absolute deadlock, you must evaluate a structural framework I call asymmetric maritime denial. For decades, Western military doctrine relied on massive capital assets, aircraft carrier strike groups and guided missile destroyers, to project power into strategic choke points. In open ocean warfare, this carrier-centric model is virtually peerless. However, the unique geography of the Strait of Hormuz completely alters the strategic physics. At its narrowest shipping channels, the passage restricts heavy warships to predictable, shallow lanes positioned within range of land-based anti-ship ballistic missiles, mobile coastal launchers, and automated drone swarms. By deploying low-cost, mass-produced strike systems, Tehran has created an operational environment where deploying a multi-billion-dollar warship in narrow waters presents an unsustainable economic risk. When defending against automated aerial and naval drones costs $2 million per interceptor missile, the mathematical burden on the defending Navy becomes unsustainable over time. Claiming total control over a waterway on social media is entirely different from physically escorting hundreds of commercial tankers through a narrow corridor under constant electronic and missile targeting. Let us inspect the primary intelligence metrics that mainstream news broadcasts consistently overlook. First, analyze commercial ship transponder logs and insurance rates across the Persian Gulf over the preceding 24 hours. While diplomatic statements claim normal transit, commercial shipping traffic through official channels remains heavily suppressed, with major international insurance syndicates maintaining elevated war risk premiums. Many commercial tankers continue to operate with transponders disabled or rely on dark fleet transfers outside the strait to avoid interdiction. Second, examine the active enforcement actions being taken by Western fleets. The fact that naval forces are actively engaging commercial vessels attempting to reach regional ports demonstrates that maritime transit is far from normalized. Tehran is operating a selective pressure valve, allowing non-Western trade to pass while imposing maximum friction and economic penalty on Western-flagged carriers. This selective enforcement exerts steady inflationary pressure on Western energy markets while minimizing retaliatory unity among non-aligned nations. This escalation highlights a foundational principle embedded at the very origin of American foreign policy. In 1796, President George Washington delivered his farewell address, warning the nation against developing an illusion of infinite capability that leads to permanent foreign commitments. Washington cautioned that when a
What happens
superpower
next in
attempts to
Europe will
guarantee
affect
security
every single
across
one of
every
us.
distant maritime corner without the physical hardware or domestic consensus to sustain it, it inevitably exposes its limits to strategic competitors. Fast forward to today. The United States Navy is attempting to simultaneously maintain high readiness in the Indo-Pacific, police Eastern Mediterranean sea lanes, enforce sanctions, and secure the
The global
Persian
balance
Gulf.
of power is
When
shifting.
naval
What
shipbuilding
happens
face
next in Europe will
backlogs and
affect every
specialized
single
missile
one of us.
stockpiles face constraints, the gap between political rhetoric and physical hardware becomes dangerously visible. When rival states recognize that a superpower's global commitments exceed its physical fleet capacity, diplomatic threats cease to function as effective deterrents. As this diplomatic and naval confrontation develops over the next 72
The global
hours,
balance of
I
power
urge you
is
to track
shifting.
3 specific,
What happens next in
verifiable
Europe will
metrics,
affect every
rather
single
than
one of
listening to
us.
political press briefings from either side. First, watch AIS transponder data for commercial energy tankers entering the Gulf of Oman. Pay close attention to whether international commercial fleets accept official assurances and resume normal transit, or if commercial shipping continues taking multi-week detours around Africa. Second, monitor military rotation announcements from U.S. Central Command to see if additional naval assets are pulled from
The
other
global
oceans
balance of
to
power is
reinforce the
shifting.
Persian Gulf.
What happens next
Third,
in Europe will
track
affect every
mediation
single one
updates
of us.
coming out of regional diplomatic centers like Islamabad, Muscat, and Doha. If formal ceasefire negotiations stall while physical maritime interdictions continue, the energy market will permanently reprice the risk of global trade. Examine the raw tracking data yourself. Compare official speeches with real-time ship movements. Ask yourself this final question. When competing governments issue diametrically opposed claims over the world's most critical trade route,
The global
are you
balance of
witnessing a
power
brief
is shifting.
diplomatic dispute
What happens
or
next
the
in Europe will
structural
affect
collapse
every
of
single
global
one of
naval
us.
order?